Good morning. My name is Ron Engleman. I used to be employed at radio station KGBS in Dallas. On February the 28th, I was sitting at home watching television, not even paying any attention to it, and suddenly a news bulletin came on the air. News bulletins are a love-hate thing with most people. You love them and you need them so that you can know what's going on because something obviously very important has taken place. And you hate them because they kind of remind you of a phone call at 3 o'clock in the morning and your children aren't home yet. What we saw were government agents right here on this site, right over there to your left, firing on a building from behind trucks, pickups. We saw ATF agents climbing up ladders, busting out windows, throwing something inside. They call it a flashbang or a concussion grenade. Couldn't believe what we were seeing. We thought we were looking at something from Bosnia or some other country. This couldn't be happening in our country, our own government agents doing what they were doing here at Mount Carmel. I mean, we were no better than, our government was no better that day than the Chinese at Tiananmen Square. And our government was assaulting its own citizens on our own territory. We're here today primarily to deliver information for people to find out, to learn more about what actually did take place here at Mount Carmel between February 28th and April the 19th. I came on the site shortly after April the 19th. They had begun building the fence and hadn't finished it yet. I wanted a feeling, and I know a lot of you people haven't been here before, but I wanted to see what it felt like. And I walked inside the fence, myself and Ken Fawcett and another guy named Rick, and we were standing there among all that rubble. I saw shoes that were burned, books that were burned, everything in rubble, bicycles twisted and burned. I walked over to the far end over there and looked down in what was to be their storm bunker so that they could stay out of the hurricanes and tornadoes around here. Looked down in it, it was full of water, obviously because it had been so wet here for so long. And a feeling comes over you when you come here for the first time. It's just kind of overwhelming. And if you have time while you're here today, during a break or two, you might want to come over here to your right rear. There are 2 placards there with the names of all of the people that lost their lives right here on this property. There was absolutely no reason for it. We have a number of speakers here today to give you their insight as to what happened, why it happened. We also, I'd like for you to remind you that we do have programs available, and they're over at the Branch Davidian table over here and a couple of other places. You might want to pick up one of these programs because they're on page 3 is a kind of a blueprint of what was there. And on there are the FBI sniper positions, the undercover house, which was right over here. That's where the undercover agents lived and pretended to be students. But like Kevin Whitecliff told me, he said, we had them picked out right away because students don't wear Rolex watches, fancy clothes, and drive brand new pickups. So I'd invite you to pick up a program. And I think we're going to begin this morning with a gentleman named, his name is Ron Cole. He became involved here in early March, and he's the author of a book entitled The Sinister Twilight. Ron, come on up.
Let me get rid of this. Sure. I want to begin by thanking you all for coming here today. I have to be honest and say that I wish we didn't have to meet like this. I also want to begin by saying that I am not a Branch Davidian. In fact, before February 28th, 1993, I did not know any of the Branch Davidians. I did not know David Koresh. I didn't even know where Waco was, specifically within the state of Texas. On February 28th, I was in Florida, of all places, and during that time, I watched with horror as agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms attacked what I saw as a religious sect, one way or the other, here in the serene hills of Texas. And at that time, I believed that David Koresh may well have been an eccentric nut. And at that time, I believed that those that followed David Koresh may well have been gullible lost sheep searching desperately for a charismatic leader and a place in life. But at the same time, I believed, and I knew in my heart, that the people that were living here at Mount Carmel Center, their home, were people. And they were American citizens with rights that were upheld by the Constitution of the United States and rights that had been violated. Over the course of 51 days, as I stayed in Florida listening to the shortwave broadcasts that were coming out, which gave us an alternative view of what was going on here, and they included some interviews with several of the survivors, people that were coming out during the siege, like Rita Riddle, for example, who came out supposedly to help in the negotiation process between the FBI and David Koresh. And one excuse replaced another for not going to Waco until April 19th, almost exactly 1 year ago, when I had to watch the place burn down live on my TV set, as did a lot of this country. And at that day, the excuses ran out. I threw everything I had in my car, and I came here to Waco, Texas. Got me a map, finally found out where it was. I had intended to spend 3 days here. 3 days turned into a week turned into a month has turned into a year, and I am still here and I'm still going. I am not a professional reporter, and I am not a professional writer. I am simply an individual who did not have the ability to rationalize this situation away. I discovered, on coming to Waco, that David Koresh was not the charismatic fanatic that I had thought he might have been. I discovered that David Koresh was an American patriot who also saw the constitutional rights of American citizens disappear year after year after year, who watched the situation in Randy Weaver at Ruby Ridge in Idaho. David Koresh had a message, a religious message, that he wanted to present to as many people as possible. Now, whether we agree or disagree with that message, that matters not, because in the United States of America, we have the ability to preach a message. No matter how demented or sick that message may be perceived by others, the moment someone like David Koresh loses the right to preach that message, we've all lost our rights to preach our message. I also learned that Steve Schneider, David Koresh's so-called right-hand man, or second in command, I learned that Steve Schneider used to teach comparative religion at the University of Hawaii before he came to live here at Mount Carmel Center. I learned that Wayne Martin was a Harvard-educated attorney who ran his law office out of the first floor of Mount Carmel. I learned that Janet McBean, who was also a Davidian that had lived out here, Janet was not at Mount Carmel on February 28th because she was in California finishing up her nursing degree. Yet she was a Branch Davidian and a follower of David Koresh. I learned that Livingstone Fagan had his master's degree in philosophy from a university in England. At this moment, Livingstone is in a jail cell for the alleged crimes that he perpetrated on February 28th during the BATF attack. To make a long story short, I've come across a lot of information over my year here in Waco. During this time, I've lived with the survivors. I've talked with all of them. I've read all of the government reports. I think I've seen more videotape than I could possibly imagine at this point. 3 things come to mind: demonization, cover-up, and disinformation.